Let's go.
Let's go. When I said OneTaste, you were like, huh? I don't know what that is. So this episode will serve as a light accompaniment to the documentary called Orgasmic on Netflix.
Okay.
So I am not going to be doing usually I'll do like a little like kind of I guess like retelling of the documentary. I chose a couple different routes today because it's like, okay, go watch the documentary and this is going to be, I wanted us to talk more versus like me doing the retelling. So go watch the documentary if you want to. If not, you'll get enough data here that
I was gonna say I might not want to. I don't know.
You might not want to.
Not stoked.
It is deeply fascinating to watch.
Okay.
So OneTaste was a sexual wellness company that rose to massive popularity before becoming the center of several federal criminal charges.
Can I tell you that I already have a preconceived opinion about them because anyone that has wellness in their branding is a fraud.
Is a fraud. I am very much so looking forward to telling you about this because this marries so much of the wellness stuff we've been talking about with the exploitation. We got some gender bending in here where this is two women that have led this organization.
I'm not surprised at all, and not like in a I hate women kind of way, but just in a
Heather, we know that you're very anti-women.
Very anti-women. Famously, that's always been my stance. No, but for anyone listening, if you haven't already heard me recommend it, The Wellness Myth, I have to say it is a little bit dense because I think some of it could be summarized a little bit more, but it is truly fascinating and it's a really good look at how exploitative and false the wellness industry is. So
yes,
big time recommend. And they called out Teal Swan, and so that made me really happy. So
perfect accompaniment to this. So OneTaste was founded in the early 2000s. So Heather, what do you remember from the early 2000s? What are some things that...
Well, I'll tell you something I'll never forget from the early 2000s. I'd be remiss not to mention that one. But early 2000s, I think, is when you had people like Nicole Richie being shamed for being the big one in her show with Paris Hilton, like publicly in interviews, being like, so you're kind of large. How do you feel about that? I mean, just cuckoo banana stuff. Early 2000s was also when we were still very much in the like cocaine chic of it all.
Yeah. Yep.
Definitely not a good time to be an adolescent.
No. Yeah, that was rough for sure. It was which to tie in now it's like, okay, well now this is fresh on my mind too. I was reading earlier about Wexner and Epstein, the owners of like who owned Limited 2, who owned Victoria's Secret, who owned, and I started watching all these clips and like reading through some stuff, and I was like, oh my God, these pedophiles literally shaped the clothes, like Hollister, Abercrombie and Fitch, all of these big conglomerate, deeply disturbing men own these companies. And part of this was that when I look back on the early 2000s, there was a lot of like sexualized, I don't want to say sexual, it's a tricky thing to talk about, right? Because it's like, it was such a confusing time because it's like, where are these sexualized where are these clothes? There was a lot of sexualizing in media.
Objectification.
Yes, it was objectification while also being like, now be good.
It was because I think about, and this is something that I still love because I'm still very much stuck in a lot of early 2000s with like media and things that I think about and relate to, but this was a time of juicy couture. I mean, this was a time of let's put words across our asses.
Ed Hardy, yeah,
and our chest, right? And you had like Gwen Stefani's Lamb line, and that was all like across the chest and across the butt, and that was cool, And I mean, I remember being young at that age and going, I want that stuff. I didn't think anything of the fact that I would have the word juicy on my butt.
Me either.
Meaning anything. Same with like Victoria's Secret pink. I remember when that line came out because it was more like for the younger girls, like the teenagers.
Preteen, teen.
Yeah. And it's what I've always heard is that it's pink because it's just girly, but of course I
Mm-hmm.
remember boys even in middle and high school making fun of me if I wore anything with pink on it because they were like, "Yeah, you know why it's called pink." And yeah. So I think it's easy. It's a fine line to walk where on the one hand it's like body autonomy, right? Like I can put whatever I want across my body. It
Exactly.
doesn't give you the right to think that I'm objectifying my own body.
Right.
But well, maybe not but and it
Mm-hmm.
also kind of walks this line of correct, but you are choosing to advertise a brand in places where maybe there are better places to advertise words than across your chest or your butt.
It also it also is a difficult it really is a difficult thing to talk about because one, we're all out here policing each other. So it's like I find myself being like, I don't want to say the wrong thing.
Right, because I also am like, but I'm not saying that anyone who's
Yeah.
done that is asking for
I
anything.
am like, so
No,
where
I still
I've
love that stuff.
yes, I'm like, where fucking nipple pasties and a thong.
Here's what
You know
I'll
what I mean?
say. I think what it is I look at it as everything that I do, everything that I wear, every time I put on makeup, every time I get my hair done, I do it for the female gaze.
Yes,
Not just the female
yes.
gaze, but the female gaze. Because I want because I want other women to look
Yeah.
at me and engage with me and whatever. When the audience changes against my wishes, that's when I find it problematic because it's like, well, I never did this with the intention of you looking at me. I don't care about you or your
Yes.
opinion or your input, but I
Yes.
do care about yours over here. And there's
Hmm.
not a, you can't, how do I do that? How do I?
Well, yeah, and also in full transparency, when I was younger, without the understanding nor the like development to know that I was being conditioned to dress for the male gaze on purpose.
Correct.
And that is the difference.
Yeah.
I was being conditioned that I am to sexualize myself to matter to this person who wants me.
Yeah.
And I obviously now understand that, and I dress and wear whatever I want to wear. And I too am like, okay, well, first of all, I feel hotter whenever I dress for like the female gaze, or whenever if I feel good no matter what I'm wearing, that's what I'm gonna wear. But also, like, I want a teen girl to be like,
She looks
okay,
cool.
I she looks cool. That's like,
Yeah.
I want me to, like me as a teenager, I want to look at that
Well,
and
and
her
I
to be
think
think that
that's
she's cool too, like
isn't that
that's
fair? Because the expectation would be that that's what's going to happen. I think it's totally like fine and plausible and understandable that we're not in our minds as cisgender women going, well, but a man is going to look at me and have an opinion. Because you look at videos in like documentaries of Britney Spears when she was on Star Search when she was, I think, 6 years old.
yeah,
And
they
they're
talk to
using
her, they
words like
sexualize her.
sexy,
Yes.
sex appeal, bedroom
Yes.
eye. She's
Yes.
6. Just because you put makeup on a little girl and a pageant dress doesn't mean that now you have the
Yeah.
authority
Yeah.
to put her in a different category of
Mm-hmm.
woman.
Yeah.
She's a baby. So,
Yeah.
and that's a whole other world, right? I mean, then we can get into John Bonet territory, but as
Yeah.
far as what we're talking about, it is very much like, yes, we were drawn to things because they were cool and
Mm-hmm.
because they were hip, but we were not
Didn't
looking at
know.
anything with
Yeah.
the idea of, oh, it's cool and hip because the creeps that own these companies want to make
Yeah.
sure that it's cool and hip so that they're controlling what women are wearing.
Yeah. So, and this all is incredibly relevant because to paint the picture of the early 2000s and growing up as a preteen and a teen in this time is like the relationship to sex and sexuality is very confusing. And then if you add the layer of, we both grew up in the South. So there's like this extra layer of purity culture or expectation, but everything's super perverse because you're being also simultaneously told that your worth is in the sex that you do provide for your husband, while also saying that you're basically a whore and you're ran through if you have sex before marriage, and it's like,
Yeah.
okay, then you're worthless.
Yeah. Or
So
with more
there's
than
this,
one person.
yes, exactly. So there's this very weird thing going on specifically in the South. Now that I live outside of the South, I often feel a sensation of like deep grief for the parts of me that didn't get to live outside of this South very trad wifey space. Being raised as a Southern Baptist, as we've shared many times, is I wish I had had a more access to more actually liberating space.
Yeah.
And then I started reading about OneTaste, learning about things, and I'm like, okay, wait, this isn't like a north-south thing. This isn't. There's just a lot of perversion in
I
general when it
don't like
comes
the
to.
name. Yeah. So tell
Yes.
me who are these people?
So again, founded in the early 2000s. So this whole entire organization centered around a practice called OM. Again, this
So
you'll
we're
see.
already like colonializing
Yeah,
something.
yeah, exactly. You'll see throughout this entire thing is they're whitewashing, colonization and whitewashing everywhere, and also incredible marketing for the not only for the time, but also it's just was a disaster of a recipe as far as exploitation goes. But they, as you'll see, it really worked. So, orga Om stood for orgasmic meditation.
Oh my God,
And
this is what you
that
texted me
is
about.
what I remember once I started. Yes. So this was marketed as a deeply empowering and awakening practice. Okay. So again, it was led by two women by the name of Nicole Dadon and Rachel Sherwitz. So we'll be talking about Nicole predominantly because she was the one who pretty much ran the whole thing. So there's also a few men who are considered also as some of the main characters of the play, but we'll briefly touch on them. They were mostly for like financial support, and then some just like systemically upheld the whole thing. So OneTaste was a community. It was also an ideology, and it was also a business model. So this organization wraps up a whole lot, and might I add that unfortunately I do think that women could run the world, and they did an incredible job at this, just in
Yeah,
a
it
really
doesn't mean that
bad
you're
way.
using your powers for
Right?
good. Yeah.
Yeah. At the time, many of the participants in OneTaste described feeling seen, awakened, empowered, and connected. And as we discussed many times before in this podcast journey so far, they don't go into it
Nobody
like,
goes,
I
I
think
love
this is
this
terrible.
cult.
Yeah.
I'm going to join this cult.
Nobody joins a cult. So obviously, they join to get things like relief. They want to better their lives, escape from their pain, and many other things people named as the reasons why they joined OneTaste. And often, as we've gathered in other episodes, many folks who join are searching for belonging, identity, transformation, healing, etc., etc. And the feeling of relief is incredibly persuasive. And
I'm
hang
so
on
sorry,
to that.
But all I can hear is you saying the feeling of release because we keep saying the word orgasmic.
Well, that's exactly what I was about to say. Is like, okay, the feeling of relief and relief,
Yeah.
one and the same.
Yep.
That in and of itself, yes, the feeling of release, this thing that you're getting marketed, obviously that's really persuasive.
Come join us.
See our presentation. So you marry a deeper desire for healing with a fulfilled sense of relief, and you get folks like super locked in. And then through devoting themselves to this space and this cause, something they now believe in and want to share with others, because it's made them feel so much better. So
yeah, okay,
now,
it's gonna be so hard for me not to. We need to hurry and get to the bad part because I want to make so many bad jokes.
So over time, as we know, boundaries begin to slowly move. Mm-hmm. And this is basically what happens through OneTaste, is that it starts off, and what eventually winds up happening is we're getting a very good display of what manufactured consent would be. Have we talked about manufactured consent explicitly?
Not a lot.
Okay, so just as a grounding little pin here, manufactured consent, an example of that would be, first of all, it's very normalized. So we live in a society where pretty much we're riddled with manufactured consent. And an example of this would be having to stay in an abusive job environment in order to maintain healthcare and access to a basic need. Mm-hmm. So that would be something like, okay, I'm not consenting to this as manufactured consent because I have to stay because I have to have these treatments because I have whatever, I'm diabetic, right. Whatever. So again, OneTaste, they marketed this empowerment, feminine awakening, embodiment, transcendence. So who was their main demographic? So very binary here, early 2000s, there was no they thems. So there were they thems.
But we're living in the binary. Yeah,
there were no, I mean, We cannot overstate how intolerant the early 2000s were to any type of conversation around anything other than the binary. So in all their marketing, it was towards women who were seeking connection, healing, and a sense of sexual and self-reclamation. So these were women who were searching for emotional attunement, deeper intimacy, belonging, sexual agency, healing from relational wounds, permission to inhabit their bodies, and relief from shame. Because as we started at the top, this era, this time, was deeply rooted in bodily shame. Obviously, it's a fundamentally human drive to want deeper connection.
Yeah.
So that was their main demographic for women. And this organization used language that suggested that female pleasure mattered.
So already getting everyone's attention.
Yeah, getting my attention. Yes.
I'm listening. Thank you.
Yes. That women could be centered. Desire was intelligent. Sexuality could be conscious rather than performative, which is mind-blowing, especially at that time, Yeah. And that connection could be structured and intentional. In a culture where many women are socialized to deprioritize their own needs, this messaging can obviously be alluring.
You know what this is making me think of, though?
What?
Is like the modern dating coach alpha male kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
But packaged in a feminine forward wellness.
Yes.
Neutrals and calm, marketing kind of style. But very much this idea of like, hey, if you listen to me, I can teach you how to be your inner sex kitten, whether it's for someone else or for you, it doesn't matter. But like, we can get you there.
Yeah. And it started off, when you watch the documentary, or if you watch it, it starts off very like, we're here to empower ourselves, empower one another. You are strong. Like, it's very, it is the, very much so the gendered, it exactly is like that. It's like
just very marketed way better.
And sexual and accepting. Okay. So I love this. Well, we're going to hold on to that and then like kind of tie it in whenever that also comes up for you throughout, I want you to mention it. What about the other side of this?
Yeah, what's happening there?
So there were men who were also marketed to, because let me be clear, men are a huge part of these OM sessions.
Well, I kind of expected, but I just figured maybe they were on the payroll.
Well, kind of, not really.
Okay.
So this makes sense so much, and then also is like, oh God, tech men. Think San Francisco, California, Silicon Valley, men who are often seeking both access and emotional experience.
And the same demographic as most wellness culture alpha bros, like, let me live forever, put microchips in my body. Yeah, nothing has changed.
Well, actually, the flavor of these men was much more docile than what you're describing. So I think that
they were just getting warmed up back in the early aughts.
Yeah, they didn't have all those podcasts yet in their ears telling them to, do all these fuck ass things. Reporting and participating accounts frequently described a noticeable presence of men from tech and entrepreneurial spaces. Again, especially in San Francisco during this like really peak growth early 2000s years. Many of these men were financially resourced, intellectually driven, socially isolated, achievement-oriented, and accustomed to optimizing their lives, which all of those still apply to this demographic that you also are bringing up. But I'm not going to go off on this tangent, but I am incredibly fascinated at this transformation of this demographic over the last 25, 30 years. Some of them struggled with traditional dating. Pretty much everybody, all the talking heads in the documentary were like talking about how much they struggled with traditional dating. Others described difficulty accessing emotional intimacy, and some were curious about sexuality, but uncomfortable navigating it. Okay, this is the juicy part.
Okay.
So what is an OM? So an orgasmic meditation, as we said, often called an OM, was presented by OneTaste as a structured, partnered mindfulness practice rather than a sexual encounter. Okay. So a typical session involved two people. One person, most often a woman, would lay clothed from the waist up in a supported position. So think like a pillow in the small of your back, a pillow behind your head, pillows on the side of your arms. Very supported, you know. And at some point, they also did do sessions where men were the ones that were being mindfully practiced on. Mm-hmm. But I mean, they were basically hand jobs. Let's be very clear about that.
Yeah.
But they didn't advertise this because, as you'll get to know, the entire energy of an session would have completely dismantled had they flipped it and gender swapped the roles, because then it kind of all just falls apart, as you'll get to familiarize yourself with as we go on, and like, you know, I should present to you what the structure is. But I'm sure you can already imagine like the difficulties with presenting this as a wellness and deeply sexually liberating, and then there are women giving men hand jobs in front of an audience.
Well, actually, have you heard about this show called, I think it was called Virgin Island, and then they may have changed it to Are You the One? It was in the UK.
Yeah, I have heard of it.
Have you ever watched it?
No, I haven't actually.
It's what you're talking about. And let me be a little bit clearer. The therapists and the practitioners would be instead what you're referring to as like the female or the male in that situation, and they're essentially like surrogate partners where they are consenting to sexual intimacy with you in order to therapeutically help you learn and feel safe and comfortable. And
what are you saying to me right now?
What is this? I'm gonna have to send you some things because I would actually love your take as a therapist. I did not know that these were careers that existed.
I'm super confused as to what you're talking.
Wait, but it's what you're saying. We're like,
this is real life. This is not a show that's like,
this is a show that is real life, but
it's reality. It's a reality show.
Yeah, but it's to be honest with you, it was like sort of moving in a somewhat complicated way, but it's all virgins that are very uncomfortable and nervous and sort of afraid of like, how do I navigate the real world? How will I ever find a partner? I don't know how do I do sex? Question mark, you know, like that sort of thing.
Yes.
And so there were male and female therapists, and it truly all the way to full on penetration. Yeah.
Oh my God.
So we'll put our little pin there, and I'm going to send that to you because I would love your take. Comparatively.
Okay, and here's
the
bridge.
Signed up knowing what was happening.
Okay, and here's the bridge. Is sex work not?
It's real work.
Real work. And I'm like, well, then what's the difference between? I mean, let me be clear.
Well, but I think that's exactly the
your
difference.
Your therapist should not be like finger blasting you. Okay, like let's start there. Like that's
No, let me put an asterisk there because they should be if that's what you both have consented to.
If that's what you both have consented to. Now, and it's a specific type of person who there are maybe some things put in place. Right.
And there are certain boundaries agreed upon and contractual.
Sex work can be obviously
healing.
It can be healing. It can be.
But I think that's the point, is that what I'm talking about, while it sounds like the exact same practice, was consent, whereas what you're talking about sounds already like manufactured consent of like, well, I signed up to be liberated and now
and
I'm being
then
penetrated.
You'll see to be fair, I wonder if we could get that cleared on the
came to be liberated, stayed to be penetrated. Altering.
Well, to be fair to your point, these people, This is really helpful to talk through because in the beginning of this and the way that it's presented, so this is a really important distinction, that what you're bringing up is, these people, this is what they're consenting to on this TV show. It's like, well, they are watching this so part of these sessions would be, it doesn't necessarily have to be practiced in front of other people, but watching the documentary, I mean, they didn't get real censored. They just quite literally only have like the person's like genitalia blurred out and everything else is like very visible.
Yeah.
In that there's a bunch of people in the audience watching this happen and
they're like, what I'm talking about. It's in a group setting.
And they're like,
it's not.
Yeah, and right, until
Yeah.
it's not. And in this specific scenario, it's like the people who are watching this and signing up for these courses and classes and things, both men and women, are watching this like, yes, I want to be a part of this. So I think the
Hmm.
question here is, when does it turn into something that is like, for
When did the
example,
goalpost move? Well,
when does
so,
it
but
get.
people were watching it at first, so they had some idea of what they were getting into.
So there is a TED Talk that Nicole Dedon does, and that's part of the reason why this got so big. But I mean, she's not up there having an session in her TED Talk, but she's describing OneTaste and this like space of sexual liberation and this practice of And I didn't watch the TED Talk; I don't know exactly what it's about, but I would imagine that it had to do with like women's wellness and this whole like sexual liberation conversation around this practice. And it opens up, and it is like, you as the audience, you are watching an session where a man is up there getting a woman off on a table, and everyone's watching, and they're like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. Everybody's like insanely locked in. And like, also, I get it. So would I. If I'm participating in something, watching, I'm like, I cannot believe this is happening right now. But everyone around is like, okay, but this is what we're here for. This is we're normalizing this like sexual experience. It's not a sexual encounter, remember. This is a mindfulness practice. So this is where all of the questions get introduced. Is like, can you say something is a mindfulness practice that is actually a sexual encounter? That is the difference, I think.
Yeah. Is this legal?
No, because later on, and the reason why the reason why we are talking about this is because Nicole and Rachel were just proven guilty of a lot of terrible stuff and a lot of federal charges. And that's the other reason why I bring this up, is because what they are doing and what they wound up doing and what they got people involved in was sexual coercion and labor sex trafficking, basically. Like,
Right.
it's both labor trafficking, sex trafficking. There's like all these different parts of this so we're not quite there yet, but it's already muddy water, right? So I
Yeah.
also want to make the distinction between, these people were not saying that they were sex workers. They're not clinicians, they're not practitioners. They are just, and we'll get into a little bit of Nicole's backstory, but basically she had some experiences leading up to this point that makes this make sense, but this person does not have any certifications or anything. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
um so we talked a little bit about the sessions themselves. Obviously, as I described, that men did eventually, at later on, years later, also engage as in like swapping positions, basically. But in the original practice of where the man is practicing on the woman,
Mm-hmm.
the partner, typically a man, like I said, followed a set of specific instructions to stimulate the woman's genitalia for approximately 15 minutes lightly. And in the documentary, they go into like the specifics around this. And in short, obviously, like, is to be assumed, but obviously they're up there fingering the person.
Granted, this is a unique topic, but I'm already thinking, doesn't that by default make it not mindful? Because if you're having to follow a specific set, now on the one hand, don't get me wrong, I'm glad there are boundaries, question marks, and like whatever.
Right.
But if the goal is supposed to be, at least on some level, like liberation and kind of
Mm-hmm.
self-ownership and all of this, wouldn't what happens if you want to say like do it differently or
Well,
change it or
Nicole
more?
probably, yeah, Nicole probably would have said no, because these sessions were timed, they were ritualized, and they were intentionally standardized to maintain their status as a mindfulness practice and not a sexual encounter. So
Can
participants.
you imagine having like a class pass? Like you go with a friend. They're like, I'm gonna bring you this really fantastic class, and then we'll go get a juice.
So I think it's also important to note here that these participants were instructed to focus on sensations rather than performance. That's another one. Yes.
Even in this situation.
rather than
Don't judge anything.
rather than performance, conversation, or the orgasm itself.
Well, then I'm confused.
I know. So this will be done in front of others, obviously, like I said, in groups or presentations. So also, I'm going to pause here because we haven't paused enough.
No, don't stop.
I'm just going to edge you the whole podcast. So at some point, I don't really know the timing of events exactly, per se. Go watch the documentary. I can't really remember. But at some point, like any good cult does, they all wind up living together.
Well, sure.
So there's this big old group at some point that gets formed where Nicole also lives there. And you have what is called a research partner.
Stop it. Like a lab partner.
And y'all are just fucking, is what you're doing. I assume in the beginning that
but
may not have been
assigned that person.
You are. We'll get into that a little bit. You're either assigned that person or you can pick them. It gets a little fuzzy as you'll see. Everything starts getting a little fuzzy.
Now we're like in twin flame territory.
Yes, it does feel very twin flamey. Nicole Dedon describes the as a form of attention training. Something she believed that could help participants become more present, emotionally attuned, connected to themselves and others. The first thing that threw me off, well, maybe not the first, but one of the main things that threw me off where I was like listening intently, watching, being like, okay, yes. They started throwing the terms pussy and cock around very flippantly, and come to find out that was a huge part of Nicole's, I don't know, I guess her vernacular was like, we're gonna, like, in order to, honestly, I don't even really
destigmatizing.
Yes,
dirty words.
But yes, these dirty words. But the really like it felt so forced and uncomfortable, and
yeah,
it was encouraged, and it was just I can't help but think that it really did feel like the kid who's trying to be cool in school.
Yeah,
by using these like very activating terms, and everybody's like, God, dude, you can calm down. It felt very.
Isn't that kind
forced.
of already what's happening just in terms of
yes
taking this thing that's sort of taboo? Sorry, I have to get my thinking putty out. I need to do something with my hands. I'm all antsy. Because you're taking something that's, and I'm not saying that it should be taboo, but I'm saying it is societally, that is masturbation, penetration, any of these things, and especially talking about them, let alone doing them publicly, and trying to make it like a part of your like wellness vibe. But I do feel like she's already doing that because she's taking something that's taboo, like, you know, penetration or masturbation, and then she's going, but look, now it's part of your wellness journey.
Yeah, and like your pussy deserves to be liberated. It feels
exactly.
very like, and let it not go unsaid that this woman is very charismatic. If that's not already clear, the way that she presents these things are like you're already on board for it. By the time she says it, it's like, oh yeah, obviously I agree. Like she has that she's very charismatic, and you want to agree with her. So she has this like energy about her, and it almost is like if she says it, I can say it kind of feeling. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so she
Which
often
is funny because then again, you go against this whole idea of you and you being centered and you being grounded and you being you.
Yes.
And it's like, no, you're just copying
and listening
else
to this person.
And impersonating them. Impersonating them?
Impersonating them?
I'll workshop it.
Merch idea?
Okay, I'm so sorry.
You can't really cock is just too, men already take up so much space that it's like, even the word cock is like, just get it out of here, you know, like, you're gonna get it away.
Get your cock away from me.
Now, don't get me wrong. They're welcome sometimes in some spaces. I'm not like anti.
There's a time and a place.
So Nicole often framed these practices as this like way forward through, and we'll get into a little bit of like, her backstory and like how she framed all of this as like clearing blockages, which we've talked about that before.
Here we go again.
I know, it's the same. It's so crazy. We start talking about this stuff and it's like, why is everybody copy, you know, control, alt, copy, paste, all, It's crazy.
Because it works.
Because it works. You're so right. So she framed this as a pathway forward, a deeper interpersonal connection, an increased emotional intelligence. You have expanded awareness through this practice and personal and relational
clarity.
That's
all this is. This is this
clarity.
whole cult.
And here's the thing.
Won't you feel amazing after this? And then you do.
And the answer is yes.
You do. Because it's just endorphins and hormones.
And
then you're going,
this works. Oh my God.
Unblocked.
It works. Someone gave me permission to have sexual fantasy, to have sexual relief. And later on, we'll get into it a little bit, but they included things like BDSM practices. They start including like all this kink and stuff. So some of these people are like, I never knew this was possible. This is so sexually liberating.
That for them. And that is liberation. And that's
great.
But
in the context of this is deeply traumatic.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, take a like striptease class. Go see Dita Von Teese or something. Like, go get on some weird subreddits or like there are other ways to do
there
this.
Are groups that are BDSM and kink groups that have, and I
like for noobs.
Look, I'm not going to get too far into this. Many abusers are attracted to these spaces, obviously. So with a caveat, proceed with caution. Correct.
But
still. Yes, but still. So Dedan also spoke about as a way to access what she called, here's where we get into the overlap with all of our other lovely little cult leaders that we talked about before. Access to what she called powerful life force energy, sometimes referred to as eros, which she believed could enhance creativity, vitality, and overall well-being when consciously cultivated. Importantly, OneTaste positioned the practice at the intersection of mindfulness, sexuality, and personal development, emphasizing that it was not meant to be foreplay or a replacement for traditional sex, but distinctly awareness exercises done with a structured container, and that it was its own thing, and it wasn't a sexual encounter, and that it wasn't traditional sex. I'm just going to, it was probably really loud. So I'm going to read you.
Oh boy.
I took notes watching this documentary, and also from my readings and other things that I did, but this one specifically were some thoughts and some quotes. Orgasm is my religion, Nicole says this. So from right off the
bat. Girl,
same. I mean, again, here's the problem. I didn't say this a few minutes ago whenever you were mentioning that, like, okay, yes, you get this release, you feel really good afterwards, post-nut clarity. It's like, yes, actually. And again, like we say every other time in every other cult episode, there is a little bit of truth in all of it. And that is how they keep you in.
But it's not an energy blockage. Your pelvic floor is just contracting muscles, and then you come and you release them and you go, oh,
and you feel
that feels
better. So one thing that I wrote down is that it was suggested to people who were not getting along and that were in conflict that they fuck instead of fight. So here is where we're getting into, okay, there is this practice called an Om session, right? It's in and of itself, it's its own thing. But now we're getting into, okay, collectively as a group, you live in this house, there's 40 people who are all living in bunk beds together, fucking around each other all the time. Which, again, if that's what you sign up for,
they should start a band.
Look. You know what that this was missing? A band.
This is the one cult that didn't try to make music. It would have been good.
Would have been fire. Yeah, it would have been so good.
Fleetwood Mac 2.0.
Yeah, so again, not opposed to, I don't know, group orgy, like fuck around each other if you want. Like, obviously, the distinction here is that if you're in conflict with, and also, this is important to note, some of these people are actually Nicole's employees. So videographers, people who are doing accounting, marketing, right? Some of these people work for her. And other people...
None of these people were HR employees.
None of these people were HR employees. And some of them were members and some of them were employees. So whenever there was conflict, you would go to Nicole and she'd be like, just fuck and you'll figure it out. So she would literally encourage people to go have sex with each other. And even if they didn't want to, they would do it anyways. And the quote that I wrote down was fuck or fight. And that is what your employer is telling you to do.
Let's take a quick moment. Let's take an aside in all seriousness. If any of you just heard that and you went, so what? My partner and I do that all the time. Please understand that is not healthy, and you should not normalize it. And if you have a therapist, go ahead and bring that up with them.
Conflict is healthy. Conflict is normal. However, that feels complicated. There are many
also
branches.
Feels so patriarchal. I'm
Yes,
sorry. I'm
yes.
sorry to play that card and be that person.
I think that
it is.
Yeah. It's activating for a reason.
Yeah.
You know, so, and if we had 3 hours, I would further elaborate on that.
That's like a whole. It's been an hour already.
No, you don't have to shut up. You definitely don't have to shut up, because this is all very important. And I think not saying anything whenever you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
that I prefer you say something and then we put a pin in it to further explore than not say anything at all. Obviously, they're challenged to do deeply uncomfortable things. And men at one point actually started paying more money than women to be a part of this OneTaste. Yeah. So again, another signal of exploitation. I also noted Nicole's interest in multiple different religions, which we have seen many other times before. And also, not only would it be like employee to employee, but some employees were also encouraged to fuck their customers. They would be encouraged to, like, if that person is feeling blocked up or closed up, or that the solution would be, oh, like, you this certain employee, Nicole would point out, oh, hey, you're the one, go do that for that person.
This is interesting though. Why was it never self-stimulation? Why was it always?
It was always, never was it ever about masturbation. Which I also thought the same thing.
Confusing. Yeah.
It is confusing. Again, this clearing out blockages narrative was super consistent. And at one point, Nicole, I quoted her saying, the only thing you're held in bondage by are your beliefs. And if you let those go, you're free. And I think that that's
except
really important.
Except for these beliefs.
And I think it's important to note that basically what she's saying is all that resistance you're feeling about that this might be wrong, all that prior stuff that may have made you feel bonded, internalized patriarchal norms. That part, yeah, okay, sure, but yeah. So, anyways, it gets darker and darker as we go on, but we'll pause there as far as quotes go. Who is Nicole? Her philosophy centered around the concept of eros, like we mentioned before, which she described as a vital life force that could be harnessed through orgasmic meditation. She believed that by engaging in individuals could achieve a state of eudaimonia. It is a Greek word through an ancient Greek concept of human flourishing characterized by a deep connection, creativity, and a spiritual awakening. So she said, I'm just going to slap all these things together. Nicole was born August 28th, 1976 in California. She was raised by a single mother. She earned her bachelor's degree in gender communications and semantics from San Francisco State University in 1994. Following her graduation, Dedan explored various professions, including opening an art gallery, working as a waitress, and briefly engaging in sex work. So I'm going to pause here. There was mention, and there is mention throughout reports, throughout writings, throughout people who experienced Nicole as both an employer and as someone who, like, people who were customers of her practices and this OneTaste group, in that it was kind of confusing what her backstory was. So sometimes, and this reminded me of Teal, is that sometimes she would talk about certain things, and Father Yod, that was very similarly, the background and her experience was used to uphold her narratives around
her credentials.
She did talk about, like, at some point that she was a sex worker, and then another time she had discussed, which I guess I should add this to the content warnings, of like sexual abuse as a child. She had mentioned being sexually exploited and abused as a child. And again, we get into this tricky territory where she would say things that were contradicting, and her story would adjust and morph and change along the way. I do not know which things actually did happen, obviously, and which ones didn't. But that feels worth noting, that, again, another overlap where this leader of this very charismatic group that is rooted in exploitation, that her backstory morphs and changes. It is highlighted that obviously she has contradicting backstories, and a lot of people get confused about what exactly she experienced both as a child and as a young adult. So what we do know is that she immersed herself in spiritual and meditative practices. This is way before she even started OneTaste. So she studied yoga and Buddhist meditation. She was involved with what are considered intentional communities. One of them is called Lafayette Morehouse, and the other one is called the Welcomed Consensus. I looked these up. These places are still open and running.
Great.
Which is partially where she got her encouragement, her ideas. They emphasized sensuality and communal living, significantly influencing her perspectives on sexuality and human connection. These were communal living groups, and they have pretty much sealed up their doors and don't really share much. Kind of hard to find out about what they practice current day.
Yeah, because when you don't seal up your doors, you wind up on a podcast.
You wind up on a podcast. That's right. So in 2004, Dedan founded OneTaste in San Francisco. She introduced this practice, combining this mindfulness and sexual stimulation that we've described. Dedan articulated her philosophy in her book that she wrote in 2012. It's called Slow Sex, The Art and Craft of the Female Orgasm, drawing parallels between the slow food movement and a more deliberate, conscious approach to sexuality, which is super interesting because, as we've discussed, a lot of sense. Yes. So, as we know, the slow food, well, for those of you who don't know, the slow food movement was a response to the fast food increase. And so then there's a very marketable opportunity to be like, slow food focused. So for several years, Nicole's business model gained significant traction. This blew my mind. Getting the attention of celebrities across the board. She went absolutely, before going viral was a thing. She goes viral before that's even possible. And Dedan sold her stake in OneTaste for $12 million. Yeah. So we mentioned from the top some other players. The two other men that were involved and they were kind of higher up were Robert Candell, a co-founder who helped establish the company's initial structure and their offerings, and another person by the name of Reese Jones, who's a Silicon Valley investor and Dedan's former partner. He provided financial support to OneTaste during its expansion. So, okay. Again, like I said, I will not be going into detail about all the stuff that it talks about in this documentary. I, again, highly recommend if you want to get into the nitty-gritty and all the other details. They do involve seances, and things get really fucking wacky. There's snakes involved. It's wild.
They having sex with ghosts?
They're not having sex with ghosts, but that would probably make just as much sense.
Yeah, that's a missed opportunity, I think.
I think so, too. Yeah. So OneTaste stands out from other groups that we've talked about involving.
Oh my gosh.
Involving cult-like organizations due to its unique blend of modern wellness culture, like we talked about, the sexual empowerment narratives, and the corporate structure. But unlike traditional cults that often revolve around religions or spiritual dogma, OneTaste operated under the guise of a legitimate business, offering personal development and wellness services. So this wellness industry facade, which, again, from the top, definitely read this book that Heather's talking about. OneTaste marketed itself, and this is how it kind of grew to fame, as a sexual wellness company promoting these OMs as a path to healing and empowerment. This position allowed it to attract individuals seeking personal growth, not only sexual liberation, differentiating it from groups that were overtly religious or had spiritual agendas. So that's the other thing, is there was no spiritual or religious tie here. So it kind of got everybody it got all of the more like kind of folks. Yeah, the hesitant folks. It got the more like quote unquote worldly folks, right? Because it's not religious. So it was kind of like a perfect setup. So it had a corporate structure. The organization functioned with a hierarchy complete. It had a whole sales force behind it that targeted revenue and different goals. So also in the documentary and in a bunch of the reports, you can start to see a very significant shift as it grew in popularity and as money started being introduced in all the sales tactics, things just become more and more perverse. Because then everyone is considered like when you come in and you're seeking this personal growth and development through these own practices, they would intentionally seek out people who had certain characteristics that they know they could get money from. Yeah. It just, like I said, keeps getting worse. So the business-oriented approach lent it an air of legitimacy, making it more palatable to mainstream audiences and investors. Investing is where this crazy ass thing with the snakes comes in. So Nicole winds up doing a presentation to a bunch of investors, like Silicon Valley investors, where she shows them an Om meditation practice, but it's her up there in front of a whole group of these potential investors.
Shark
And
Tank
they
could never.
do Shark, first of all, incredible performance.
I mean,
it is a wild. Insert clip here.
She just starts taking her clothes off. She's like, I'm asking for a 10% stake.
With a snake wrapped around her neck, which I thought is so...
She starts doing Britney Spears choreo. Oh my God.
Take my money. Yes.
For real.
So this practice that she displays, she gets up there, lays down. They do this whole thing where this person like comes over and like, I mean, it was really hard to watch.
What is the snake doing?
I don't know.
Just
you know what
there?
It feels like is it leans over into all of these appropriated practices that are obviously very perverse.
It's like weird symbolism.
Mm-hmm. And she just made the whole thing up. She just made up this like it definitely feels like something about the beginning of Epstein files, I have to say. It feels very that deeply disturbing content that's like, oh, this is not...
Yeah, like surely this has to be a code word, right? Because we can't really be talking about this, right?
Yeah, no, this is not happening in front of me. So again, like I said earlier, they're targeting vulnerable individuals. OneTaste specifically recruited people with histories of trauma, offering them a sense of community and healing. The targeted approach is more calculated compared to a broader recruitment strategy that many traditional cults use. So again, like I said from the top, I only think that women could have done this in this way because they really did it. Do you know what I mean? Like they used their power.
They would have been found out the Scooby-Doo mask would have been taken off way sooner, I think, if it had just been men, because someone somewhere would have been like, I'm sorry, you're doing what with whom for whom?
Exactly. It just is really interesting when you flip the script that it like is like, wait a second. So the use of sexual practices as a control mechanism is another reason why it makes it different. So while some cults have incorporated sexual elements, OneTaste's central practice of these alms presented it as a therapeutic technique, reframing the sexual act, obviously, as a wellness practice. It blurred ethical lines and facilitated a deep, deep manipulation. So this is one of the main reasons why I brought this to you today, Heather, was that the legal precedent. The conviction of OneTaste leaders for forced labor conspiracy is very notable. So one of the main reasons why I brought this to you, Heather, is that it applies labor laws to contexts involving sexual and psychological manipulation for the first time that we've seen, like in this big of a way.
Which makes sense, because I mean, you're charging people to join, but then using people in it to do the things. Yeah.
So this sets a legal precedent for addressing abuses in organizations that operate under the veneer of wellness or self-help. So this is a huge deal for other corporations, other businesses, cults, like whatever level of legitimacy, other people should probably be concerned if they're in the business of exploiting people and it involves any sort of like physical labor or sexual, practices. So I'm super excited about that because this is a big deal.
Yeah.
So OneTaste's integration into the wellness industry, corporate structure, their targeted recruitment, and the use of sexual practices as tools for control distinguishes it from many other cult-like organizations. And in this case, it highlights the need to scrutinize organizations, obviously, that, while appearing legitimate, may engage in exploitative practices under the guise of personal development. I have another episode I'm going to do about a whole other group and organization that also exploit people through the guise of personal development and wellness. So, little pin there. We're going to be talking about it much more. And the turning point that brought Nicole and Rachel under federal investigation was in 2018, an investigative reporter by Bloomberg Businessweek They wrote an article that detailed allegations from former OneTaste members who claimed that they were manipulated into unpaid labor and coerced into unwanted sexual acts under the guise of personal growth and healing. The report highlighted practices such as encouraging members to incur significant debt, to participate in expensive courses, and pressuring them into sexual activities with potential investors and clients. Following the publication of this report, federal authorities initiated an entire criminal investigation into OneTaste operations, and in June of 2023, a federal grand jury indicted Dedan and Sherwitz on charges of conspiracy to commit forced labor. Prosecutors alleged that from 2004 to 2018, they orchestrated a scheme that exploited OneTaste members through psychological manipulation, economic coercion, and sexual abuse. Tactics included constant surveillance, indoctrination, and intimidation to obtain labor and service from members. The indictment detailed how members were compelled to work long hours without proper compensation, and they were coerced into sexual acts to benefit the company financially. Thoughts, questions before we get into the legal proceedings?
My mind is just blown. Yeah, I will be watching this documentary, but go on.
Okay. Yeah, there's so many details that I want to talk about that are so deep, both deeply disturbing and just wild.
Should we make this a two-parter? Like, do you want to talk more about it? Or do you feel like you're wrapping it up?
We're done. This is it.
Okay. Because it's good. I'm having a good time.
Well, I'll finish the legal proceedings and then I'll finish my notes from the documentary. Okay. And then we'll go into a little bit more of like what all the things that I saw and heard, and just little important tidbits that I pulled from that. So some of the key findings from the legal proceedings that I felt were important here is the application of the forced labor laws to non-traditional settings. So that little pin obviously is important. So traditionally, forced labor laws have been applied to cases involving physical restraint or other overt threats. So in this case, the court recognized that psychological manipulation, economic coercion, and emotional abuse can also constitute forced labor. So typically and historically, this has been applied in cases where the person is physically being forced into labor, not manipulated or coerced.
Right.
So this is huge. This broadens the scope of what is legally considered coercive labor practices. So another point is that the recognition of the psychological and emotional coercion, the court acknowledged that tactics such as sleep deprivation, public shaming, manipulation, and personal trauma can effectively strip individuals of their autonomy, rendering their labor. Checklist. Yes, exactly. So this is like a huge deal. So they basically are saying that this can effectively strip individuals of their autonomy and render their labor involuntarily. Like it is involuntary. So this recognition is crucial in understanding how modern organizations can exert control without physical force. So there's that gray area that's been, very rampant through all of these organizations. It's like, well, we're not holding a gun to their head.
Right.
So implications for the wellness industry. You're going to love this. So the case underscores the necessity for regulatory scrutiny in the wellness and self-help sectors, where charismatic leaders may exploit individuals under the guise of offering healing or empowerment. It sends a very clear message that ethical boundaries must be maintained and that abuses of power will have legal consequences. And then the last point is that the impact on future legal proceedings, obviously. This conviction may influence how courts interpret and apply forced labor laws in future cases involving psychological coercion, particularly within organizations that operate under the pretense of personal development and spiritual enlightenment.
Yeah, or like content houses.
Yes, or content houses. That's a great point. That's an incredible point. So the OneTaste case expands the legal understanding of forced labor to include psychological and emotional coercion, setting a precedent that could obviously affect a lot of other cases that will happen in the future and the people that will be persecuted. Now we're going to kind of segue into a little bit more of the findings from the documentary, all my little notes and stuff, just some tidbits, because Heather was saying that she's enjoying kind of a little bit of what are some of the details that I pulled from the documentary. So we were already talking about the whole, like, you know, fuck your coworker situation that's deeply problematic.
Don't do that.
I am going to say something that is really upsetting. So, forewarning, this is really heavy and it involves rape. So Nicole believed that there was no value judgment of rape as the perpetrator or the victim.
Okay.
So that's the first one. The second one, and this is really upset me, is that she believed that, and this was obviously used as part of the case later on, is that you cannot be raped if you are turned on 100%.
Unreal. And actually not an unusual take.
I know.
Which is definitely upsetting because, I mean, unfortunately, your body can still react physiologically.
Of course. And that has been used before in cases I have watched, you know,
certainly.
Where the defense tries to say stupid shit like that. And it's like, okay, that's not, obviously deeply disturbing and upsetting. Yeah. And
big difference between physiological response and enjoyment.
Yes, very much so. And that, I mean, we could get into so many different instances here of like, I'm not even gonna go there. Yeah, there's just so many other things that we could get into that involve this same exact stance that is deeply problematic and untrue. Through, and again on the documentary, Nicole describes she believes that, and then she also describes in a couple different instances where the goal is to 100% accept and receive the sexual gratification, even if you're resistant to it. And that's the precedent for, well, if you're 100% turned on, then it can't be that. Yeah. So at some point they did the BDSM classes. They introduced that into things. So not only are people being sexually abused, they're being physically abused as well. I mean, it's one and the same, but then they're adding this layer of confusion. There's also several talking heads of individuals who obviously were deeply traumatized by this. One person shows up and speaks for her sibling, for her sister, because her sister didn't want to be on TV and be subject to being in the public, which I totally respect and understand. Women were being groomed by Rachel. Rachel was the main person over sales. So she was the one who was implementing all of Nicole's strategies in order to encourage people to exploit other customers to gain more money from them. They were being groomed by Rachel to say her insecurities. There's this one person that was saying that the goal was to break the person and to kill her verbally in order to make her a leader. Rachel would literally, my leg's falling asleep, so I'm standing up, but Rachel would verbally abuse her employees, their employees, and use their insecurities against them so that they would be quote unquote broken, and so that they can become a better leader, I guess is what I'm trying to say. In reference to the BDSM and kink practices that they practiced, one thing that I wrote down was that Nicole believed that slashing each other for a higher purpose was part of it. Another time, Nicole, a member of the organization said that they would leave. Nicole basically looked at the group and was like, watch this. And had a meeting with a member, and then the other members witnessed this experience. Nicole broke down sobbing, emotionally manipulated this member into staying. And then as soon as the member left, she stopped crying and looked at everybody and was like, see, it's not easy, kind of thing.
This is so teal swan coded.
Very teal swan coded. Nicole became fascinated with seeing
serial killers.
Yeah, she became fascinated with a lot, obviously. So she became fascinated with seeing what she could get people to do. Is another talking head member person stated that like it just got to the point where you could tell that she was just like, how far can I get people to go? Basically.
I'm not going to diagnose this woman, but
uh-huh.
I could.
Yeah. One quote that she says is, "We're like lions. That's how we eat." And that was in context to when you do something vicious, you get encouraged and then normalized to do it again. It gets normalized. So when you're being emotionally and verbally abusive to another member, it's like, this is how we do things here. Take it or you're not a lion. Like, you're not in the den. You're not in an in-group, and you can't handle it. This is how we eat here. She encouraged women to appreciate the predatory behavior and sexual engagement. And then to top it all off, she says, you're not being violated. What she wants is, you're not being violated. What she wants, just what she says she wants. What did I mean when I said that? You're not being violated. What she wants, just what she says she wants. I don't know what I meant to say there. You're not violated. Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, now it's all coming back to me. I definitely blocked this out. So she's speaking to predatory behavior. She's speaking to people who are engaging in predatory behavior, or who she's basically encouraging people to engage in predatory behavior. And she says, in the reference to a woman saying no, she says, you're not violating what she wants, just what she says she wants. So another couple things I noted down here were that one of the people who was telling their story was sexually abused as a child. A couple other people were too. I think I might have already mentioned that a couple members stated that they were. I would imagine that more than a couple out of all the probably hundreds of people who wound up being members. As we've stated before, people who have trauma are seeking places of safety and comfort and welcoming, and this definitely checked all those boxes. Another little tidbit I wrote down as an end cap here was that the body responding to trauma was framed as the body working through metabolizing trauma. So she framed your body having a physiological reaction to being asked or told to do something that was not okay. She would reframe it as like, oh, that's you metabolizing your past trauma, and that's you doing something right.
It's like energy being unblocked.
Exactly. So, and I'm gonna include the whole like energy blockage clearing shit that people use in this exact same framework in another episode. But that is OneTaste.
Well, first of all, I would like to formally apologize to anybody who was super distracted by how much I'm moving around, but I'm just like,
we're both moving around a lot.
I like couldn't find enough stimulus because I'm this is activating. And
now they're gonna rot in prison for the foreseeable future. So we'll see how long they get. I've been keeping up with this just happened. I think it was in September, and then more people have been coming out since they have been found guilty, obviously, because people now feel like liberated and like they can even just legally, that it feels safe for people to come out and talk about it. So there's been podcasts and people have been on other places. So I encourage people to go listen to people's experiences, center the people who experience these people instead of these people themselves. I think that the documentary does a good job of that. Yeah.
And again, if anyone listening heard any of the things that we talked about and thought, well, it doesn't seem that strange to me, or that I feel like it's fine, please go inward with some of that. Think about some of that. And again, if you have support, bring it up in those supportive places, because nothing that we talked about is acceptable. And not just from a societal point, not just from a woke point, not just from a feminism point, just strictly from like a health and safety perspective. No always means no. You get to say no. You get to change your mind, even if first you gave a yes.
Yes.
You can leave any situation. And if you don't want to be intimate with a partner, whether you're fighting or not, you don't have to be. And if they make you feel otherwise, or someone else makes you feel otherwise, those people are wrong, not you. That's, oh my God.
Yeah. I mean, it's so normalized in, especially again from the top, we talked about the, the areas of growing up, especially in the South, is like that's your whole. I'm so taught from a young age that that's the point, is to please a man, despite whatever it is that I thought or felt. So it's like that is an important part, and I'm glad you're centering that. Is it
But even
doesn't
that
matter.
is, it doesn't even really fit in here in a lot of ways, at least from a Christian perspective, because yes, you have to please a man, but only if you are going to be procreating, right? It's like sex is only to multiply.
See, I wasn't that part. It was much less about procreation, and my messaging, I mean, obviously it was about procreating, but it
It was
was
more just like be
kind of,
quiet and be good.
yes, yeah,
Yeah.
that whole
Well,
like
and
keep sweet mentality.
oh yeah. Well, I mean,
Uh-huh.
there's so much to be said about all of
Yeah.
those things.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, well, and one of the I didn't read it beyond the headline today, but one of the girls from the Bachelor franchise
Hmm.
came out saying that she has dealt with trauma and shame her whole life from uh being exposed to porn and masturbation from an early age. And of course, it's like, babes, that's okay.
Hmm.
Like just normal, again, not talking about the porn that you and I were talking about at the top of this, but just like regular pornography, and which isn't to get into the ethics of that, but I'm talking at a basic general level of if you see people being intimate
Hmm.
and you explored your own body,
This
you're
is a
cool.
really, this is
You don't have to make
actually,
a headline about it that you feel
I'm,
terrible.
yes, and this is a really important topic that me and I have had this conversation with another friend of mine, and that and this is something I talk to parents about a lot when I work with kids, is that it is very normal for your child to developmentally explore themselves.
Starting at like 3. Look, Freud got a lot of stuff wrong,
And
but
he
he
did.
did nail those stages that, like, yeah, you
Yes.
get curious and it's interesting. And
And there is the little asterisk here, and that what you're saying is the content is that developmentally appropriate. So the way that I operate off of things and the way that I talk to parents is that developmentally, children are sexual beings. Doesn't make people very comfortable to consider because everything has been very perverted.
yes,
They explore themselves. And that again, like we're saying, is normal. However, when there is a non-developmentally appropriate interrupter, so
yes,
think like pornography at a very young age, or something like, a sibling or a friend that is
uh-huh,
being sexually abused and then brings that into the exploration, that is when things then become not developed. Then that is not
exactly,
okay. So there's a
exactly.
very strong distinction here. And to be quite frank, I would imagine that probably everyone listening was exposed at too young of an age to pornography. And that's just the fact of the matter.
Yeah, probably in some way, or even
Yeah.
if it wasn't like a digital produced kind of way, even just like walking in on your parents or something. It's
And
like it
again,
can be
like that,
confusing and
yes, like
it can throw
developmentally,
wrenches in things.
yeah, developmentally being exposed to sex it's clunky, but there are ways that are developmentally appropriate and that are to be expected. And then there are ways that things get introduced that are not developmentally appropriate, and then they become trauma. It becomes a traumatic experience, and it very much so shapes and impacts a child's relationship to their body and to sex in general. So, and there's a lot of shame around it. I mean, we could have so many episodes about like sex and sexuality and shame and embodiment. And yeah, there's so many different branches off of this, but I was just so fascinated at the fact that it was so successful. And I mean, the business model, the way that she framed it, and it had like the specific structure to it, it's just so gross.
Well, and this could be such a part two, right? Of just looking at the psychology behind how something is marketed and who is doing that marketing and the face associated with the business and how that impacts people's decision to buy in or not. I mean, it's rough out there, everybody. You know,
Yeah.
don't. This is a world where, I mean, right now, where people are throwing fits and queuing at like 2 a.m. to buy a sweatshirt by an influencer and it just has her last name on it. Nobody knows who she is, but because it's, drop shipped and it's small quantities, it's like, I have to pay $150 for this sweatshirt. But no, you don't. But it's like we're so easily influenced and we want so easily to be a part of things and pulled into the things,
Yes. And
and then it
also,
overlaps with this, and then all of a sudden you're being assaulted, and it's like, how
yeah.
it is such a short
Well, it's
bridge.
just so frustrating that the same exact systems that put us in these both financial, psychological, physical, emotional binds then provide us with the content that would be a relief.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it really is a
Oh, are
Sisyphus
you overwhelmed
situation.
by this? Here, let me sell you some wellness.
Yes. And
But it's just a
again,
different box in the same, like, it's,
and I will not get on not get on the podium here when talking about how a lot of therapy practices contribute to that, but that is to be further explored in other episodes. But yeah, that's OneTaste.
well, thanks. I hate it. You did great. And I mean,
Thanks.
look, Jerry and I had a lot of opportunities to laugh and be, silly, but certainly this is
Yeah.
disgusting and perverse and upsetting and
Oh,
yeah.
also, I do have a bookmark, a bookend for this. I wanted to frame that kind of like the end of this as a way of like, how do you know when a healing space becomes controlling?
Mm.
And so I'm going to kind of leave you all off with signs of healthier environments to kind of hold on. Systems that are healthy, first of all, they don't collapse under curiosity.
Mm.
So in a healthy environment, in an environment that will not be exploitative and harmful like this one, your autonomy expands. All questioning is welcome. So if you get curious about something, you start asking questions, it is embraced and welcomed, and then you also get answers. And if you don't get answers right away, they will eventually be answered, not the dismissiveness. Leaders can tolerate disagreement, and outside relationships are encouraged, not discouraged. So
Yeah.
those are your little mile markers for the signs of a healthier environment.
Yeah, basically, even if you're in a culty situation, as long as you're allowed to have friends outside of it, you're probably doing okay.
You're doing all right.
If you're allowed to tell people about it and
Yeah.
like leave and come back. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's that.
Well, excellent work. And
Thanks.
since we're not recording late tonight, I have time to watch this documentary.
Hell
So,
yeah.
ay,
Well,
ay,
I
ay.
hope you don't enjoy it.
No, I'm certain that I will not. Thank you. Okay, see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.